Have you ever felt completely out of place? Like no matter what you do, you just don't belong. Now, imagine that feeling, but you're in the middle of the woods, surrounded by mosquitoes, awkward mugmates, and no cell service? Yeah, I'm not exactly a huge fan of that kind of camping either. I went into this youth camp once in the fall. The air was cold enough to freeze your nose hairs, and everything smelled like wet leaves and campfire smoke. I was already dreading the weekend, certain it'd be full of discomfort and awkwardness. I wasn't just stepping outside my comfort zone. It felt like I was stepping into a completely unfamiliar world. And if that wasn't bad enough, it felt like everyone there was judging me. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and you just know people are sizing you up? That was me, except instead of a room, I was in the middle of the woods. I didn't feel like I belonged. At camp, I'd hear people talk about all the things they didn't like, whether it was the way people acted or how others dressed, and I couldn't help but feel like I resembled all those things. It felt like every criticism was directed at me. I felt like a fraud, like I was pretending to be someone I wasn't, just to fit in. When they make fun of someone or something, I'd feel that sinking feeling in my stomach, knowing I was part of that category, but couldn't say anything. The inside jokes, the whispers behind my back, it all just made me feel like I was on the outside, trying desperately to be someone else just to earn a spot. At the time, I was already struggling with the pressures to meet everyone's expectations. I spent so much of my energy pretending to be someone I wasn't. I wore clothes I didn't like, laughed at jokes that weren't even funny, and acted like I had it all together, all because I wanted to be accepted. But the more I tried to fit in, the more I became a stranger to myself. But here's the thing. Pretending to be someone I wasn't didn't make me feel accepted. If anything, it made me feel invisible. The more I bent myself out of shape to match what others wanted, the less I felt like I was even there. I wasn't me anymore, just a version of someone who might be liked or accepted. And in that process, I started to fade away, into the background, into the crowd, into nothing. It felt like no one saw me for who I truly was, and honestly, I didn't know who that person was anymore. All the pretending didn't bring me closer to connection. It just made me feel more alone. At that point in my life, I felt so invisible, like I didn't matter. I was so caught up into trying to fit into this mold that wasn't mine, I started to question my own worth. I remember thinking, what if I disappeared? What if I just stopped existing? Would anyone even notice? Would anyone even care? It wasn't a dramatic thought, but it was the kind of numb feeling that crept in when I realized no one saw me for who I truly was. I felt like I was going through the motions, just some ghost in the background, pretending to be a part of the world, but never really being part of it. And honestly, it hurt. A lot more than I ever let on. One afternoon, we were asked to find a place to reflect on our lives. I went to this quiet spot by the water. The lake was still, except for these gentle ripples that moved across the surface. It was one of those rare moments where the world kind of just stops, and it feels like the universe is giving you a little nudge. As I watched the water, I noticed something. It didn't care about the rocks or branches in its way. It just flowed, around, over, and sometimes straight through whatever tried to stop it. And that's when it hit me. If the water could flow, adapting to its obstacles without losing its true nature, then why couldn't I? That realization didn't erase my fears overnight, but it did something important. It made me start questioning things. The next day, instead of nodding along to a joke that wasn't actually funny, I didn't fake laugh. It was small, but it was a step. At school, that step turned into something bigger. I started to smile at the people who didn't like me instead of being afraid of them. I danced and sang on stage in front of the whole cafeteria not caring who is watching. I started to speak up more in class, instead of worrying about whether my opinion sounded right. And at home, I let myself admit to when I was having a bad day, like everything was fine. But more than anything, I was just happier. It was this deep, unshakable kind of happiness, the kind that makes you feel like no matter what happens, everything is going to be okay. The more I let go of the person I thought I should be, the more I felt free. And the best part? People didn't leave me when I showed them the true me. The ones who truly mattered stayed. I want to be clear. Living authentically doesn't mean you need to have it all figured out. It's not about living with no fear or doubt. For me, that moment of clarity by the water didn't change everything overnight, but it did spark a small shift in my mindset. You don't have to look at the water to have your own aha moment. It could be something completely different. A tree, a piece of art, or even as something as simple as the breeze. The point is, there's something around you right now that can show you how to live authentically. All it takes is the willingness to pause, reflect, and change your mindset. Here's a fun fact. Humans are wired to seek social acceptance. Psychologists call this normative social influence, which is our instinct to conform because we crave social belonging. Studies show that our brains react to social rejection the same way they react to physical pain. Back in prehistoric times, being a part of a group wasn't just about friendship. It was about survival. If you were cast out, you weren't just lonely, but you were vulnerable to predators. Fast forward to today, and while there are no saber-toothed tigers lurking in high school hallways, the fear of standing out still lingers. We blend in because it feels safe. But why? The answer lies in validation. When we conform, we receive approval from others, whether that's nod of agreement, a like on social media, or even just the pure absence of criticism. That validation reassures us that we belong. Think of it like an applause after a performance. If the audience claps, you feel accepted. But if there's silence, doubt starts to creep in. Was I good enough? When we act like everyone else, we avoid that silence, that feeling of uncertainty. We trade authenticity for security because standing out means risking rejection. But here's the thing. Validation from others is fleeting. It might make us feel safe in the moment, but it doesn't last. True confidence comes when we stop seeking approval and start defining our own worth on our own terms. So, what happens when you shift your perspective? Everything changes. Instead of seeing obstacles as things that hold you back, what if you saw them as chances to grow? What if, instead of worrying about fitting in, you focused on showing up as your true self? It's easy to fall into the comparison trap, and social media makes sure of that. But the truth is, no one else gets to define who you are. You define that. The moment you stop forcing yourself into a mold that isn't yours, you unlock a version of yourself that is stronger, more confident, and more at peace. Imagine this. You're in the middle of Main Street, playing music. At first, you're hesitant to dance because you're scared of what people might think. But then you realize most are too caught up in their own world to even care. And those who do notice, well, you might just inspire them to embrace their own authenticity too. So let me ask you this. How many times have you worn something just because it was in? Laughed at a joke you didn't actually find funny? Said yes when you wanted to say no? We've all done it. But you gotta ask yourself, at what cost? You might be wondering, how do you begin to live authentically? Here's how I started. Embrace the small moments. Start by paying attention to the small, everyday moments that might seem insignificant at first, but could shift your mindset. For me, it was the moment of clarity by the water. For you, it could be something as simple as watching the sky change colors during a sunset, or a quiet walk through the woods. Let these moments remind you that life is fluid, constantly moving, and you can flow with it. Challenge your comfort zone. It's easy to stay stuck in the pattern of fitting in. But remember, nothing great ever came from playing it safe. Start doing things a little outside your comfort zone, whether that's speaking up in a conversation or taking up a new hobby that's you, instead of what everyone else expects. Let go of what doesn't serve you. And this might be the hardest part. You have to let go of the need to please others, whether it's in the form of social expectations, family pressures, or even your own internalized rules. When you let go of this weight, you'll feel lighter, freer, and more aligned with who you truly are. Be consistent. Authenticity isn't a one-time choice. It's a daily practice. Every day, remind yourself that you're enough as you are. And if you mess up, that's okay. Get back on track and keep going. Living authentically doesn't just feel good, but it's also backed by science. Studies show that when we live in alignment with our true selves, we experience less stress, more joy, and improved mental health. In fact, people who practice authenticity are more likely to feel fulfilled because they're not constantly battling against themselves. As Dr. Brené Brown, a researcher on vulnerability and courage, says, authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we really are. It's a practice, a choice, a mindset shift that you'll make day in and day out. So here's my challenge to you. Be like the water. Find your flow and adapt to life's challenges while not losing sight of who you truly are. The truth is, you don't have to wait for a big moment to make a change. Living authentically starts with a single shift in mindset. It's about being willing to take off the mask, let go of other people's expectations, and flow, just like the water. So let go of the pressures to fit in, the expectations that were never yours to carry. Be bold, live loudly, and stop hiding. Because when you choose to live as your true self, you don't just free yourself, but you inspire others to do the same. If there's one thing I want you to take away, it's this. When you stop trying to fight the current and let yourself flow, life opens up in ways you would have never imagined. Ask yourself, why wait? The world is waiting for you to show up as your real, genuine self. Thank you.